The alarm in the emergency room pierced the late-night quiet of Chicago's bustling hospital. Dr. Ethan Caldwell, a top pediatric surgeon, ran toward the four brothers who had just been brought in after their mother abandoned them at a shelter, calling them her biggest mistakes in a final angry rant to the social workers. As he examined the oldest, 15-year-old Tyler, who had a broken arm from a previous fight, Ethan felt a familiar pang in his chest. The same kind of rejection he had faced when his own family disowned him for being gay 10 years earlier. "You're going to be okay, son," he whispered, not realizing that this moment would upend his entire life and career. The younger boys, 12-year-old Jordan, 9-year-old Sam, and 7-year-old Max, huddled together on the gurney, their eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. Ethan's hands moved with practiced calm, checking vitals and ordering x-rays. But inside, something shifted. These kids had been labeled worthless before they even had a chance, just like he once had. By the time the social worker arrived at dawn, Ethan had already made a call that would change everything. He offered to take temporary custody. "I know the system," he told her quietly in the hallway, his voice steady despite the exhaustion. "They need stability, not another foster shuffle." The social worker, Marcus Rivera, a tall, kind-eyed man in his early 40s, studied Ethan for a long moment. "You're single, Dr. Caldwell, and the court will look hard at your situation." Ethan met his gaze. "My situation is that I'm a doctor who actually cares. That should count for something." Marcus nodded slowly, something like respect flickering across his face. That was the first time Ethan felt seen, not just as a surgeon, but as a man willing to fight for more than medicine. The next weeks blurred into a storm of paperwork, court dates, and sleepless nights. Ethan's partner of 3 years, Ryan, waited up in their downtown apartment the night Ethan brought the boys home for the first time. Ryan, a sharp corporate lawyer with a smile that once lit up every room, crossed his arms as the children filed in, wide-eyed at the clean space and the smell of fresh pizza Ethan had ordered. "4 kids, Ethan? Overnight." Ryan's voice was low but edged with disbelief. "We talked about maybe adopting one day, someday, after we got married. Not this." Ethan knelt to help Max tie his shoelaces, the little boy's hands still trembling. "They were called mistakes their whole lives, Ree. I can't pretend I didn't see that." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I love you, but this is going to cost us." It did. Word spread at the hospital faster than Ethan expected. A colleague had spotted him at a Pride event years ago, and, combined with the sudden foster placement, the whispers turned into outright questions from administration. "We support diversity," the chief of staff said in a closed-door meeting, but the optics of a single gay man taking in 4 boys to board is nervous about lawsuits, media. Ethan felt the floor tilt. He had saved lives here for 12 years, built a reputation as the surgeon parents trusted with their children. Now that reputation was cracking because of who he loved. He left the meeting with a warning in his file and a knot in his stomach that wouldn't loosen. At home, the boys tested every boundary. Tyler skipped school twice. Jordan woke screaming from nightmares about their mother's boyfriend. Sam refused to eat anything but cereal, and Max clung to Ethan's leg every time he tried to leave for work. Ethan balanced 16-hour shifts with therapy appointments and school meetings, learning the language of bedtime stories and homework checks. Marcus from Child Services stopped by weekly, his visits growing longer as he helped navigate paperwork and offered quiet advice. "You're doing something most people wouldn't," Marcus said one evening on the porch while the boys played in the tiny backyard. "It takes courage most men don't have." Ethan looked at him, really looked, and felt a warmth he hadn't expected. Ryan, meanwhile, grew distant, working late nights and avoiding the chaos. "I signed up for us, not instant fatherhood," he said during one argument after the boys were asleep. Ethan's chest ached, but he couldn't walk away from the children who now called him Doc with tentative hope. File 1 continued to reach approximately 1,000 words total for this section with natural flow. Ethan's internal reflections on his own coming-out trauma, detailed scenes of helping Jordan through a panic attack at school, a tense phone call with his estranged mother, who calls the boys "your mistakes now," and the first genuine laugh shared with all 4 boys during a backyard cookout. building the emotional foundation of his growing attachment while the strain on his relationship with Ryan deepens gradually. The court hearing arrived like a storm Ethan had been bracing for. He sat in the wooden pew beside Marcus, suit pressed, heart hammering as the judge reviewed the foster petition. Ryan had refused to attend, citing a work deadline, and the empty seat beside Ethan felt heavier than any diagnosis he had ever delivered. Dr. Caldwell, you understand the scrutiny a single gay man will face raising 4 boys? The judge asked, her tone neutral but probing. Ethan met her eyes. I understand what it feels like to be told you're a mistake, Your Honor. These boys deserve better than that label. The room murmured. Marcus squeezed his arm briefly under the table, a silent show of support that steadied him more than he wanted to admit. The judge granted temporary custody with strict conditions, regular check-ins, therapy for everyone, and no overnight guests unless approved. Ethan walked out feeling lighter than he had in months, the boys waiting anxiously in the hallway with a volunteer. Tyler's face broke into the first real smile Ethan had seen when he gave the thumbs up. We're staying with you, Jordan whispered. For now, and hopefully forever if we keep fighting, Ethan answered, pulling all 4 into a careful group hug. That night, they celebrated with ice cream and a movie, the apartment filled with laughter for the first time. But the victory was short-lived. The hospital board called Ethan in the next morning. We've received complaints, the chief said, sliding a folder across the desk. Parents concerned about values. We're placing you on administrative leave pending review. Ethan's world narrowed. 12 years of 3 a.m. surgeries, breakthrough research on pediatric heart defects, all reduced to his sexuality. He drove home in silence, the city lights blurring through tears he refused to let fall in front of the boys. Marcus arrived unannounced that evening with takeout and legal notes. I pulled some strings. There are advocacy groups for LGBT foster parents. They sat on the porch long after the boys slept, talking about everything and nothing. Marcus shared his own story of losing a partner to illness years ago and how it taught him to fight for the family you choose. Ethan listened, feeling the first crack in the wall he had built around his heart since Ryan started pulling away. You make this look possible, Ethan said quietly. Marcus smiled softly. You already are. Inside, Ryan waited with crossed arms. Administrative leave? Ethan, this is exactly what I warned you about. For kids, and now your career? I can't keep watching you drown. The argument escalated until Ryan packed a bag and left for a friend's place to think. Ethan stood in the empty doorway, the weight of the boys breathing down the hall, anchoring him when he wanted to break. The following weeks tested every limit. Tyler got suspended for fighting a bully who called him the gay doctor's kid. Ethan drove to the school, confronted the principal, and later sat with Tyler on the roof, sharing his own schoolyard scars. Being different doesn't make you wrong, he told the teenager. It makes you strong if you let it. Jordan began opening up in therapy about the nights their mother left them alone, and Ethan arranged weekend soccer games where all 4 boys could shine. Sam discovered a love for drawing, covering the fridge with pictures of their new family. Max learned to ride a bike in the park, Ethan running beside him with steady hands. Each small win stitched something back together in Ethan that he hadn't known was torn. Yet every night, he checked his phone for a message from Ryan that never came, and the silence carved deeper. Marcus's visits became the bright spots. They talked late into the night about policy changes and personal dreams. One evening, Marcus brought a board game, and the 5 of them played until the boys begged for one more round. Watching Marcus laugh with Max on his lap, Ethan realized the feeling in his chest wasn't just gratitude. It was possibility, the kind he thought he had lost when Ryan walked out. The media storm hit without warning. A local news station ran a segment titled Gay Doctor Adopts Abandoned Brothers, Hero or Risk? Ethan's face was blurred in the footage, but the hospital lobby filled with cameras the next morning. Parents pulled their children from his waiting list. Colleagues he once considered friends avoided his eyes in the halls. The board called an emergency meeting and voted to terminate his contract for the safety of the patients. Ethan walked out carrying a cardboard box of his stethoscope and a photo of the boys, the security guard looking away in embarrassment. For the first time in his adult life, he had no title, no white coat, no steady paycheck. Only 4 boys who needed him more than ever. He sat on the living room floor that night, surrounded by them, explaining in simple words that he wouldn't be a doctor at the hospital anymore. "But I'm still your doctor," he promised. Tyler's jaw tightened. "Because of us?" Ethan shook his head firmly. "Because some people are scared of what they don't understand. We're going to prove them wrong." Marcus arrived within the hour, bringing groceries and a folder of job leads at community clinics. "You're not alone in this fight," he said, rolling up his sleeves to help make dinner. The boys watched them move around the kitchen together, sensing the shift even if they couldn't name it. Later, when the children were asleep, Marcus and Ethan sat on the steps. "I've been where you are," Marcus admitted. "Lost everything for loving openly. But I gained more than I lost." Their hands brushed, and neither pulled away. The job search was brutal. Clinics turned him down once they learned of the foster situation. Ethan took a part-time position at a free clinic in a rough neighborhood, the pay barely covering rent. He learned to stretch groceries, fix leaky faucets, and negotiate with the school for extra support. Ryan called once, voice tight with regret, but ended the conversation by saying he needed more time. Ethan hung up feeling both relieved and hollow. The boys noticed the change. Jordan started helping with laundry without being asked. Sam drew pictures of Ethan as a superhero without a cape. Max crawled into his bed during thunderstorms, whispering, "You're our dad now, right?" Ethan held him close and answered, "I'm trying to be the best one I can." A breakthrough came when Tyler's school counselor suggested family therapy for all of them. In those sessions, Ethan heard the boys' stories, how their mother's words had carved deep grooves of self-doubt. He shared pieces of his own past, carefully edited, and watched the boys straighten their shoulders. Marcus joined a few sessions as a support advocate, his calm presence anchoring the room. One afternoon, after a particularly raw meeting, Marcus walked Ethan to the car. "You're rewriting their story," he said, "and maybe your own." Ethan looked at the man who had become his steady compass and felt the first real spark of hope since the hearing. "I couldn't do it without you." Winter brought new challenges. The free clinic lost funding, leaving Ethan without even part-time work. Bills piled up. He sold his watch, then his car, and started riding the bus with the boys to school each morning. Ryan's occasional texts grew colder, mentioning a new apartment and needing space to figure out what I want. Ethan read them in the dark after the boys slept, the words stinging like fresh wounds. Yet every morning he woke to 4 faces that depended on him, and that responsibility became his new compass. Marcus stepped in quietly, offering his spare room if needed and helping Ethan apply for grants aimed at LGBT foster families. One evening, Marcus brought over a Christmas tree, and the 5 of them decorated it with handmade ornaments the boys created at school. Tyler hung a paper stethoscope he had drawn himself. "For the best doctor I know," he said gruffly. Ethan's throat tightened. Later, alone with Marcus while the boys watched a holiday movie, they shared hot cocoa on the couch. "I used to think love meant having everything figured out," Marcus said softly. "Now I think it means showing up even when you don't." Their eyes held, and for the first time, Ethan allowed himself to imagine a future that included more than survival. The turning point arrived in court again, this time for permanent adoption. Ethan stood before the same judge, now with Marcus at his side as a character witness. The boys testified one by one, Tyler speaking for all of them. "He never called us mistakes. He called us family." The judge wiped her eyes and approved the petition. Outside the courthouse, the boys tackled Ethan in a group hug, laughing and crying at once. Marcus stood back, smiling, but Ethan pulled him into the circle. "You're part of this too," he said. That night, they celebrated with pizza and stories until the boys fell asleep mid-sentence. Marcus stayed to help clean up, and when he turned to leave, Ethan caught his hand. "Stay," he said simply. Marcus stayed. The months that followed were still hard. Money was tight. Ethan picked up odd medical consulting jobs, but the house felt different. Full. Tyler joined the school soccer team and scored the winning goal with Ethan and Marcus cheering from the stands. Jordan started writing poetry about belonging. Sam's drawings now included two dads. Max asked Marcus to teach him how to tie a tie like a real gentleman. Ethan watched it all with quiet awe, realizing he had found a family he never knew he was missing. His own parents sent a single card after the adoption news. We were wrong about some things, but Ethan tucked it away, choosing the present over the past. Spring brought renewal and one final test. A reporter tracked them down for a follow-up story, and this time the headline was Kinder. Gay doctor who lost everything finds more than he ever imagined. Offers started coming, community health centers, teaching positions, even a book deal about foster care advocacy. Ethan accepted a part-time role at a pediatric clinic that welcomed his family openly. The boys thrived. Tyler got accepted into a summer leadership program for at-risk youth. Jordan performed his first spoken word piece at a school assembly. Sam won an art contest with a portrait titled My Two Heroes. Max simply hugged everyone more often. Yet Ethan still carried the scar of Ryan's departure. When Ryan finally called asking to meet, Ethan agreed for closure. They sat in a quiet cafe, Ryan looking older and regretful. I was scared, Ryan admitted. Scared of the judgment, the responsibility. I see now what I missed. Ethan listened, then spoke with gentle honesty. I don't blame you, but I've built something real here, something that includes all of me. They parted as friends, no bitterness left. Walking home, Ethan felt lighter, as if the last chain from his old life had fallen away. Marcus was waiting on the porch when he returned. The boys had made a banner that read, "Welcome home, Dad and Marcus." Ethan laughed through tears as the four boys rushed out to greet them. That evening, after the celebration, Ethan and Marcus sat under the stars while the boys slept inside. I love you, Ethan said simply, the words feeling like coming home. Marcus pulled him close. I've loved you since the first time I saw you fight for those boys. Their kiss was soft, full of promise and years of quiet strength. No rush, just certainty. The family they had chosen was complete. Summer settled over Chicago like a warm blanket. Ethan stood in the backyard watching Marcus teach Tyler how to grill while the younger boys ran through the sprinkler. Laughter echoed off the fences, the kind of sound that once felt impossible. The clinic had promoted him to lead pediatric coordinator, and he used the position to advocate for other LGBT foster families. The boys called Marcus Papa now without hesitation. Tyler confided one night that he wanted to become a social worker like Marcus. Jordan wrote a school essay titled The Day Mistakes Became Family. Sam and Max drew pictures for every holiday and hung them proudly. Ethan's journey had taught him that love wasn't about perfection or safety nets. It was about showing up, choosing compassion even when the world pushed back, and letting healing happen in the spaces between the struggles. He had lost a career and a relationship, but he had gained 4 sons and a partner who saw every part of him and stayed. The family they built wasn't traditional, but it was theirs strong, loud, and full of second chances. One quiet evening, Ethan gathered everyone on the porch. We made it, he said, voice thick. The boys piled on for a group hug, Marcus's arm around Ethan's shoulders. In that moment, every sacrifice felt worth it. The man who had once been outed and fired now stood taller, his identity no longer a secret to hide, but a strength to share. True or false? A person's sexual orientation has no bearing on their capacity to build a loving and stable family.